It was supposed to be a quiet weekend getaway. Nothing extravagant. Just me, Jason, and the peaceful lake cabin his uncle let us borrow every now and then. The moment we arrived, the cool breeze, the smell of pine, and the silence felt like exactly what I needed. We hadn't had alone time in weeks. Between Jason's long work hours and my never-ending projects, we barely had time to even talk properly anymore. Jason smiled as he tossed his duffel bag onto the couch. "This place hasn't changed a bit." I nodded, walking over to the large windows overlooking the water. "It's perfect." He came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "This weekend it's just us. No phones. No interruptions." That promise felt like everything. We spent the first evening making a simple dinner together. Grilled sandwiches and tomato soup. Afterward we curled up on the couch, a throw blanket covering our legs, and watched old movies on his laptop. We laughed more in those few hours than we had in months. I felt closer to him again, and it reminded me why I fell for him in the first place. The next morning we woke up late, had coffee on the porch, and decided to take a canoe out on the lake. We didn't say much, just paddled in silence, letting the water calm our minds. That serenity, however, didn't last long. It was around 3 p.m. when we heard tires crunching the gravel outside. Jason looked out the window, confused. "Were you expecting someone?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "No," he said. "Definitely not." 2 trucks pulled up, and from them emerged 3 familiar faces. Ryan, Cole, and Brandon, Jason's college buddies. The kind of friends who didn't need an invitation. The kind who thought every weekend was an excuse to party. "Surprise!" Ryan called out as he carried a cooler toward the porch. I stood frozen, watching as Jason gave me a look that was somewhere between apology and regret. "I swear I didn't invite them," he said quickly. Cole threw an arm around Jason. "Your uncle told us you were coming up here. We figured, why not crash the party?" I forced a smile and nodded politely. "Hey guys!" Just like that, our peaceful retreat turned into a reunion I never asked for. They brought food, mostly chips and frozen pizzas, booze, and a Bluetooth speaker that blasted music the second the sun started to set. I watched my weekend slowly unravel. Jason, who had promised me a quiet weekend, was now surrounded by friends who only seemed to talk about beer pong, fantasy football, and their wild college days. I sat on the porch, arms crossed, pretending to enjoy the music while Jason played cards with them inside. He looked over at me a few times, clearly torn, but he didn't say anything. That night, the house was filled with loud laughter and late-night cooking. I went to bed early, trying to block out the noise with a pillow over my ears. Jason didn't come in until after 2 a.m. The next morning I woke up before everyone else and made myself some tea. As I stood on the dock, watching the fog lift off the lake, I felt something brewing inside me. Frustration, disappointment, loneliness. Jason joined me after a while, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Hey, you okay?" I turned to him, not hiding my feelings. "This wasn't what we planned, Jason." "I know," he sighed. "I should have told them to leave." "But you didn't," I replied quietly. "I didn't want to be rude. And I haven't seen them in forever." "I get that," I said. "But you promised me this weekend." He ran his fingers through his hair. "Let me make it up to you. Tonight. Just you and me. I'll talk to them." I nodded, but part of me was already detaching. Throughout the day, I tried to stay civil. Helped with cooking, smiled at jokes, but I didn't feel like I belonged. Ryan and Brandon were decent enough, but Cole kept making slightly offhand comments that rubbed me the wrong way, about how I was too quiet, or too serious for the weekend vibe. Later that evening, Jason finally pulled the guys aside. I overheard him saying, "Can you give us tonight? Just a couple hours. We had this planned, and I really need to spend some time with her." They didn't take it too well, lots of teasing and sarcastic remarks, but eventually, they agreed to head out for a while and hit a bar in the next town over. Jason lit candles on the porch, made dinner, actual food this time, and set up a blanket with pillows to watch the stars. Now this, I said, sitting beside him, is what I wanted. We lay under the stars, sharing stories, holding hands. He kissed me slowly, gently, and everything felt like it was falling back into place. Until headlights pulled back into the driveway earlier than expected. Of course, I muttered, sitting up. Jason groaned. They said midnight. It was barely 10. The guys stumbled out, clearly buzzed, laughing loudly. Cole yelled something about forgetting his jacket. Brandon dropped his phone on the porch. Jason stood up, trying to calm things down, but it was clear the night was over. I quietly picked up the pillows and blanket and walked inside. Jason followed. I'm so sorry. I'm tired, I said. I'm going to bed. That night, I cried quietly into my pillow. Not because of them, but because I realized Jason wasn't the same person I once fell in love with. Or maybe I wasn't. Either way, something had shifted. The next morning I packed early. Jason walked in, eyes full of guilt. Are you really leaving? I need some space, I said honestly. You weren't there for me this weekend, Jason. You were there for them. He opened his mouth to speak but stopped. He knew I was right. I drove back to the city alone, and for the first time in a long time I felt like I could breathe. Few days later, Jason called. He told me he'd thought a lot about what happened. He admitted he didn't set boundaries with his friends and apologized sincerely. But more than that, he said he realized he needed to grow up. That he couldn't keep trying to be the fun guy for everyone and neglect what mattered most. I didn't take him back right away. Took time. Conversations. Effort. Real change. But eventually we met again. This time not in a cabin, not surrounded by noise, but in a quiet coffee shop where he looked at me, not just with love but with understanding. That was when I knew we still had a chance. Because sometimes it's in the messiest weekends, the most unexpected guests, that we learn who someone really is, and what we're willing to fight for.